So hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. For some of us it's very early in the morning, and for some of us it's Monday night. Really appreciate you taking the time. Um, so my name is Meenakshi Iyer, and I will be your host for this entire week. And we are a team of, believe it or not, 21 people from 6 countries and 7 time zones who've come together to bring this to you. And we are excited. Probably I'm more nervous than everyone else right now. It's a big responsibility, I feel, to make sure that we provide you with value for the time that you're taking out of your busy schedules to be here today, and hopefully for the rest of the week. So Anne, as you can see here, is our keynote speaker today, and we're thrilled to have her on board. I'll pass it off to her after just setting the stage, setting the context for the event, and then Anne will give us our keynote address. Okay. A little bit about me. So I am what you would call a T-shaped professional. I have a lot of diverse experience in different industries, ranging from healthcare to IT services. I'm also a trained English as a second language ESL trainer. I have lived and worked in 2 countries, India and the US, and my experience is multicultural even within India. Anyone who knows anything about India knows that it's a melting pot in itself as a country. So I've spent a lot of time in different parts of the country, and then have been in the US for the last 12 years now. And I speak 4 languages, which I think helps me in the work that I do. And I'll get into that a little bit. So why this event? And before we get into what the heck is for IR anyway, what really led me to this was, number one, I took a break from corporate life about 8 months ago now. There's several of us on this call that have known me and have seen me go through that journey. And I reached a point where I said that, okay, I think I really need to reevaluate what I'm doing, and what is it that I can do to bring value to those around me, to my community, and to the world at large. So with that intention, I set up North Star Solutions and Services in August of last year. And this is the first big event under the North Star banner. And I'm really thrilled and excited to host this event. What led me to this particular event was everything that's happened until now. So, as I'm showing you on the screen, we started the year with a lot of fanfare, start to the new decade and whatnot. And it quickly sort of changed and transformed into the current situation that we are in. One of the things that happens every year at Davos in Switzerland is the World Economic Summit's big meeting, the annual meeting. I've been following that for a few years, but this year, since I transitioned from being employed full-time to being self-employed, I think I was the boss of my own time. So for the first time in many years, and I actually had the opportunity to follow this Davos Summit start to finish. And there were lots of discussions that I followed on LinkedIn and otherwise. And it was interesting to me that the theme this year was stakeholders for a cohesive and sustainable world. And that got me thinking. And lo and behold, we heard rumblings of the start of a pandemic come February. And it was not until early March that the World Health Organization did declare it as a pandemic. March also coincided with the celebrations of the International Women's Day for this year, and what made it special was that this year was the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Women's Conference. So for those of us that are unfamiliar with that, that's something that the UN does. The UN has held 4 world conferences so far, and the 4th one was the one in Beijing that was held in 1995, and this year is the 25th anniversary of that. The reason that stands out is that was the first time that women's rights and women's empowerment was really sort of codified, if you will. And that's a point in time that now in 2020, right on the heels of the Me Too movement, it's one of the things that happened. Leading up to that, it's a point in time for us to sort of look back and see how far we've come. April, Earth Day, we've been celebrating that for many years. Turns out this is the 50th anniversary. And that was interesting. A lot of landmarks, if you will, in a year where we're all ready to sort of, you know, a lot of us want to wipe out 2020 from our collective memories. So it was interesting, and I've recently started my journey as a professional coach, and I'm a learner coach with Coach Arya, which is also another one of our event partners, and also a global coach training and professional coaching company. And that brought it to my attention that May, just last week, 4th to the 10th, was actually International Coaching Week. And why do I talk about coaching? And you will hear from other speakers throughout the event that coaching mindset is actually turning out to be one of the top 10 leadership skills that we need in order to be successful in the future of work. So this is all of these things kind of you know, culminated in this event for me to visualize this event, and here we are. So like I said, what the heck is 4IR? So let's unpack that a little bit. It's an acronym for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It was coined by the founder of the World Economic Forum, founder and executive chairman, Professor Klaus Schwab, way back in 2016. And I say way back because just in 4 years, the world's changed, and it continues to change. So he published a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and that was the theme for the Davos Summit that year. What was interesting to me, and the reason I chose that as the theme and talked to the speakers and panelists about it to get their sense on that, was when I looked around for you know, material on it or literature or research, there was very little that was talked about from an application perspective. There was a lot of theory that was there. I didn't find a lot of chatter in places where I expected to find some, such as LinkedIn, for instance, and or other professional groups around how are we going to face this? We are already in the middle of it. So how are we going to face this? And what are how do we intend to navigate this? So I thought that as I'm starting off in the third reinvention of my career, I thought this would be something that I could work with and bring a global diverse perspective on that from folks that I really look up to, both within my network and also folks that I've worked with and known for a long time. So that's the whole genesis of this. Why do we have to really care about it? Well, pandemic aside, we see that our world has become more digitized than ever. There's a lot of convergence of various technologies, be it artificial intelligence, be it machine learning, be it how we consume television, for instance. There is a lot of data behind every aspect of our lives that is being collected, whether we realize it, whether we want to admit it or not. Doesn't matter how many security locks you have on your digital footprint, it still is tracked, and it's being put to a lot of good use, as well as we'll find out from some of our speakers through the event. What is it? It changes a lot of things for us, how we interact with one another, how we interact with our workspaces, where we work, how we work. As we've seen in the current pandemic, a lot of us are fortunate, I would say, fortunate enough to be able to work from home. And what does that mean? If everything's happening from home, including our children's schooling, for example, what does that mean? Is that the future? So that's the whole purpose of, so why is it important? I think that if the pandemic actually is an opportunity for us to sort of pause and regroup and really figure out our way forward, instead of just dealing with it as one more challenge that we somehow have to get over. I think it's a great opportunity for us to figure out our next steps and put some thought and meaning into it. And so, okay, all that's great. So now what? Well, that's what you're going to get in the next 5 days. Speakers from different countries, the US, the UK, India, and even from Australia and New Zealand, who share their not only their experiences, but also their insights. As much as it's no fun driving, looking in the rearview mirror, I think that all of us would agree that there is value in learning from the past in order to figure out our way forward. So that's what you will see from and hear from all of our speakers. They are here to share their experiences and also their insights from their diverse, both culturally and professionally diverse experience. And the how of it, how are we going to operationalize all of this? That honestly, I will say that that's where the power of one comes into play. What each of us does with all of that information and learning, and how do we move forward? That's up to us. There are a few tangible takeaways from this event, and I'll get into that in a minute. So there are 5 broad themes for this event, and it's all centered around the ancient African philosophy, which actually is if you look at a lot of ancient civilizations, Ubuntu has other names, but then the concept of Ubuntu exists in most ancient civilizations, and that's the concept of interconnectedness. I am because we are. And I think that if in the pandemic situation, if we don't realize it, I don't think we ever will. So the 5 broad themes around which our speakers are going to deliver their talks are these 5 themes, starting with what is digital transformation doing to us, and how is the field of robotic process automation, how is that impacting our current lives, and what does it mean for our future workplaces? There are climate change, there's geopolitical events that cause both business and human impact. What does that mean to us? Is agility the new way of working, both at an organizational level and at a personal level? What about, since we're saying that we're all interconnected, how do we make sure that we include everyone? Diversity already exists. How are we including everyone? And how are we using technology in that space? And what kind of individual and collective workplace skills do we need to navigate this economy and this future of work? So these are the 5 broad themes in no particular order. As you may have already seen the event calendar, we have talks every day. There are 3 different sessions every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then 2 each on Monday and Friday. So you will hear speakers dive into each of these themes and share their own perspective and insights. So for us, collectively, this team of 21 people that, by the way, started off as a group of 21 and very quickly turned into a team. It's been a fantastic experience just putting all this together for the last, and we've been doing this for the last 4 weeks. What you see today is the effort that every one of us has put in over the last 4 to 5 weeks. So we are here to inform, inspire, connect, engage, and hopefully inspire you to act. There are many things, many ideas around this theme for the 4th Industrial Revolution and the future of work. We are trying to bring some of the bring your attention to some of those thoughts. So we would like to inform you, and then our hope is that you feel inspired when you are able to connect the dots and see the domino effect around these different aspects. And we hope that we are able to help you build some bridges with other people that attend this event, and also build some connections between these topics that seem very disparate, but they're not. And in the end, we hope that you're able to take away something from this and build that into, that we hope to add to your bias for action, in whatever way it may be. Something, a change that you bring to your style of working, or a change to how you spend your free time, or what you invest your money in, or how you invest your time and money in. It could be anything, and that's for you to figure out. But we hope that we are able to collectively bring you all of that information and help you think through some of these things. So this is who we are. I hope, can you guys still see my screen? Thumbs up if you can. Okay. All right. So this is the team of 21 that I was talking about. Several of us are here on the call, so thank you very much. And you will hear from each of them either in an individual session or during a panel discussion. And of course, there are 2 separate networking sessions as well, so you'll hear from them throughout. Okay. And this is how far and wide we come from. So there's several of us on the east coast of the US. Anne and Rebecca and Magda, they're in the central time zone. Zoya from Canada, Sriharsha from the UK, several of us from India, Hema and Erica from Melbourne, Australia, and Auckland, New Zealand. They, of course, they're already in the future, so they'll join us tomorrow. So I hope they'll be able to see the recording. So that's the team. And this is who everyone represents collectively. So these are all the companies that they represent or they own. So several of us are individual business owners. And then there are some that are like Anne is with Cprime, and Zoya is with Accenture Canada. Mahua is a co-founder of The Star and Me, and several of us have the Coach-Area connection as well. And the rest of the logos that you see here are all independent business owners that you will hear from throughout the week. So that's our global crew. When we started, we said these are our operating principles. Our focus is on saying that, okay, we want to add value, so we give before you get. And this is especially for, this is very dear to me, specifically as a individual business owner that's just starting out. My whole aim is to ensure that I add value before I try to figure out what am I getting out of it. I want to see that I'm able to give the best that I can. And the whole team, like I said, that quickly became a team from being a group, our fundamental operating principle is collaboration over competition. So there are more business owners here more of us are business owners, and we all are coming together to bring you, our attendees, the best content possible on this theme. Some housekeeping stuff. All of these sessions will be hosted on ubcity.com, and that's our event technology partner, Heli and Shalav. They're on the call with us. That's the duo. They are the co-founders of ubcity.com. And it's actually, I'm really proud to say that it's a woman-owned business from my community, and I'm very, very excited to partner with them for this event. So registrations are, so everything is handled through UBCity, the UBCity platform. They are a educational social network. And so those of you, all of you that are here on this call today, and even those who registered but couldn't make it, you will notice that you are able to build your network, even just like you would on LinkedIn, on UBCity as well. And you will see that you'll be able to access the recording right where you registered for these sessions as well. So it's all very, the flow is fantastic. It's nicely taken care of on one platform. So you do have to register for individual sessions so that even if it's not in your time zone, but you're interested, I would highly encourage you to register for it so that you get access to the recording directly within the UBCity platform. Every session, the talk itself will be for 45 to 50 minutes, with the talk being for 30 to 35 minutes, followed by Q&A. And everybody will be on mute through the talk, and then the questions can be asked through the chat window, and we'll unmute people, and you can actually unmute yourselves during the Q&A session. You will notice that when you register for the session, everything is either 90 minutes or 75 minutes. So there is a 15 to 30-minute informal networking kind of built into each session, just like you would in a face-to-face or an in-person event. So you have some opportunities to chat with one another and also with the speaker. All of these sessions will be recorded, and we already covered the other housekeeping aspects. So what's in it for you? Yeah. So there's some tangible stuff and there's a lot of intangible as well. So I wanted to call out the tangibles first. Our hope is to make this event an all-inclusive primer on everything to do with the fourth industrial revolution and the future of work. There's opportunities, there are challenges, and every challenge is probably an opportunity in disguise. So we hope that we'll provide you with enough insights and information so that you are able to explore this further on your own. From a people perspective, I believe that this is as diverse a group as you can get, and with a global cultural diversity. It's a global group. There's a lot of cultural and professional diversity in this group, and as attendees, you have access. You get introduced to this group. You can keep in touch with them on LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn group, or on UVCD. It's up to you. What you make of it is up to you. But this is an opportunity that we are providing. Again, networking opportunities, and I already talked about the LinkedIn group, and you will have access to the session recordings as long as you've registered for that particular session. Our event technology partner, UVCity, is sponsoring a gift card every day. So there'll be a raffle at the end of the day. And all attendees have a chance to win one $30 gift card per day, as long as you've attended at least one session, not just registered, attended a session, and also completed your UVCity profile to at least 80%. So as long as those two conditions are met, you have a chance to win. Yeah. These are some of the intangibles that we wanted to point out, that our goal as the team of speakers and panelists is to bring out all of the aspects of the fourth industrial revolution and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead of us, and also help you connect dots. Realize that each of us has the potential within us to bring about a change, be the change that you want to see around you. So there is a lot of potential in the power of one. I, for one, definitely believe in that. I think that the fact that we're doing this event and the way it's come around, I think to me that's evidence of that. And then, which leads me to the next point about collaboration. That's exactly what this group of 21 people have done. There was intention, there was a lot of commitment, there's a lot of trust, especially since there's several of us that have never met in person, that have only known each other for the last, I don't know, few weeks. So we all agreed that we're doing this, and once we agreed, we stuck to it, which I think it's also one of the operating principles of the Scrum way of working, where teams are self-organizing and you do what you say you would do, but you have the opportunity to say yes or no to it. Yeah, but once you commit, you're in it. So acting with purpose and empathy, that's the other piece. There's a lot that's going on in today's world, and everyone has a story. So being kind to yourself and to others, and always giving the benefit of the doubt is, I don't think that it can be overstated. One other thing, we keep hearing this, at least I do, this acronym of VUCA. Hear it a lot, and it's said with a lot of, so it comes from the military, the world of military, and it's volatility and uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. And it's whenever I've heard it talked about, I've heard it talked about with a lot of trepidation, with a lot of, oh my God, the world's going to end today kind of a frame of mind. And there's at least two speakers in our group, in our team, that challenge you to reframe it. And there's several of us that are doing it in different ways. So these are the some of the intangible takeaways that I wanted to call out, and I really hope that by the end of this week you do feel like you've gotten at least a few of them. And with that, I'll pass this off to Anne, So Anne, I'll introduce you very briefly, and then please, you know, do justice to your to the wealth of wisdom that you bring as well. So I first met Anne, I want to say about 2 or 3 years ago, through her webinars at Cprime, and boy was I blown away. You will see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. It's the ease with which Anne demystifies the most abstract of constructs, and it's just her style, and the accessibility that Anne shows just through her presentations. And that's exactly how I was able to get connected with her through a good friend of mine, Alex. I don't know, Alex, if you're on the call. Huge shout out to you. Alex and I were business associates, and when I first brought this to him, Anne was the first person he thought of, and I was kind of quietly very pleased, because I didn't have the guts to bring to ask him for it. So when he offered it, I said yes, thank you very much, and that's how Anne and I first met about 5 weeks ago now. And very graciously, Anne agreed to be a part of this, do the keynote, and also she's provided me with a lot of useful pointers on the whole event itself. So Anne is the VP of Product Agility at Cprime. Cprime, I'll let you introduce Cprime, and they are, for those of you who are familiar with the world of project management and IT software development, etc., you'd have heard of a tool called Jira, and the company that owns it is Atlassian, which is an Australian company. So Cprime is actually one of their platinum partners, and so we're really, really thrilled to have them be part of this event, and for Anne to kick us off. So with that, over to you, Anne. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Mina, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to be here today with this gang. This is going to be a really special event over the course of the next week or so. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you hardcore folks out in India who are staying up late to listen to me. I'll try to keep you awake here as we talk today about the pace of change and the future of work in the fourth industrial revolution. To me, like, change has always been a topic that's kind of been near and dear to my heart, because I feel like I have two personalities with respect to change. I have a personality of fear, that's afraid that I might not be able to make it, in that future. And then I have a personality of excitement that's like, I get bored really easily. So change to me is this thing that's going to bring about the next challenge. And sometimes those two personalities kind of argue with each other and stuff like that. But I've been thinking about kind of the heart of what has become this talk for more than a year now. So I really appreciate this opportunity to kind of bring those thoughts together under the theme of the fourth industrial revolution. Samina shared a little bit about me, but my background, really my whole career has been spent in the software and technology industry vertical. I spent about 10 years as a developer, then from there moved into product management, spent about 7 years in product management. And since then I've been working as a leader and a coach, helping teams and companies of all shapes and sizes, large and small, basically be able to build technology products in a better way. So that's kind of what brought me to my current role at Cprime, leading our product agility practice. And, I just like to think of myself more as a product thinker and a human. And I'm a very normal, flawed human, just like everyone else on this call. So what I'm going to share with you over the course of the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk a little bit about the pace of change and what that's looking like right now. And then we're going to talk about how do we make ourselves and our companies in a way that we can respond to change, and we can use change as something that helps our business and not something that we need to be afraid of. And then, we'll tie that a little bit back into the fourth industrial revolution and what's going to separate people and companies in the future versus how have we been measured, how are we measured now, or how have we been measured in the recent past. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the pace of change. I think as I go out and I work with different clients right now, There is one prevalent theme, and it doesn't seem to matter what industry you're in, if it's a small company or a large company. People are constantly being asked to do more with less and to do it faster and faster and faster. And this is causing a lot of stress and anxiety, kind of for obvious reasons. Why are we being asked to do more with less? Really, I think it all comes down to things are changing so fast that right now large companies are under attack. Here's an article that came out of Inc. magazine, but basically they said half of the S&P 500 companies will be replaced in the next decade. That means basically half of the large companies in the United States will no longer be large companies in the United States in 10 years. I honestly believe this might be a little bit of a conservative estimate, given how fast things are changing now. Let me show you a bit of an example on this. What I'm about to share with you is a video, and basically in this video you're going to be able to see what the pace of change has looked like over the course of the last 6 or so decades. So let's take a look at that. What's on this video is the top 10 companies by revenue in the United States, and we started out in 1954. And I don't want you to worry so much about what the companies are, but I want you to kind of look at how much they're shifting around in those top 10 positions. And if we look back into the 50s and 60s, really those top 4 or 5 companies weren't changing at all. There was a little change at the bottom, but not much. Now let me jump ahead a little bit and let's go into the 80s. Now, here as we're in the late 80s and the early 90s, you'll see things are changing a lot more. Companies are growing and contracting faster. There's a lot more shuffle at the bottom. We're even seeing some shuffle at the top. All right, now let me bounce a couple more decades forward and look how fast things are changing now. And this is just the top 10 companies in the United States. These are the most stable ones, those ones that were staying in the Fortune 500 for maybe 100 years. You can see from this video that not only are things continuously changing, but they're changing faster and faster and faster. By the time we get to the end of this, no position is safe here. And really what's happening is success has shifted from building a business that could never be disrupted to building a business that can handle any disruption. All right, and all of this was true before this little thing called COVID came up a couple months ago. I've given this talk many times pre-COVID. This is the first time post-COVID, or during COVID, I guess. It'd be great to say that now is post-COVID. And really, I don't want to spend too much time talking about COVID, but to me, this cartoon kind of sums up everything that I've been thinking and feeling about this from a professional standpoint. I've listened to so many companies, and although they may not be brazen enough to say, oh, it's not our problem, we don't need to worry about it when it comes to digital transformation, still the pervasive attitude is like the company that you see in this picture. And there shouldn't have been a doubt before, but there most certainly shouldn't be a doubt now. Companies need to embrace technology, but more than just embracing technology, they need to embrace agility. All right. So that's what the pace of change is really bringing us. One of the other things that really stands out to me as I think about this, and I think about maybe the last 20, 25 years of my career, is the pace of change is also changing us as individuals. And I didn't realize till I got the opportunity to work with this team that that's actually a thing, and it's called personal agility. So I want to share with you some of my experiences over the last couple decades in the industry of growing with respect to personal agility. And hopefully some of these will kind of map into your worlds too. I remember very vividly when I first started out my career as a software developer. The most valued software developers, the leaders on the team, they were deep specialists. So if you think of the spectrum of skills that maybe is required to build a product and bring it to market, be it software or hard goods, it's a pretty wide spectrum of skills. But these specialists or these experts, they were very, very deep experts, but only in a narrow swath of that. And back then, it was good to be as deep of an expert as you could be. And if you were the only one that knew that thing, that was even better, because then you couldn't be fired. You had a guaranteed job for the rest of your career. You also rarely would reach and learn new things because you were too needed in your area of expertise or your specialty. So you could be very comfortable, you could be very confident, you could pretty much know everything in that area. I've really watched over the course of time that world change. This is something I'm very thankful and happy for, because I never was going to be one of those deep specialists because I get too bored too quickly. But the world has changed now and is starting to favor the generalist. So if you think across the spectrum of skills required, now leaders are looking more for people that can span some of these specialties. And with that, we know they're not as deep. They may be deeper in some areas than others. Likely no one's going to span everything still, but if we can span more, it gives us more flexibility. Also, if we're open to spanning, we're probably more open to learning and adjusting as we go. All right, so we're shifting from being a specialist to being a bit more of a generalist. Now, I'm not saying though that the empty, hey, I know everything, but you don't really know nothing, don't really know anything thing is the right way to go. You still need expertise. It's just a little bit different level of expertise. So this is where that whole concept of T-shaped skills comes in. Once we're kind of thinking that way, now we can organize and work in teams differently than we ever did before. We've been talking about working in teams for as long as you can remember, but we weren't really working in teams. We were kind of doing it alone, and the work would span across this life cycle here, going from left to right, from column to column to column. So we would do our thing alone, then we would pass it up to the next column, into the next column, into the next column, just progressing along like this. There were a lot of other bad things that happened in here too, like we could get roadblocked maybe on this column because there's only one person that knows this specialty that's able to do this thing. And now the rest of the whole assembly line has to wait. So let's imagine reinventing that and making that more where we build a group of people or a team that is going to span this whole spectrum of skills. And there's probably going to be some overlap. This person maybe can work kind of across like this, and this person can work maybe across like this. Now we have some flexibility because if this person gets too overwhelmed or stuck, these other people can help her. Now we've truly become a team and we can work together versus handing off and working alone. All right, so let's imagine we've got a team. Now let's think about where that team sits. When I first started my career, everyone was sitting here in the great state of Minnesota, all together in the exact same building. I was just reflecting this morning as I was prepping for this presentation when in my career it became okay to even work from home. And I think it was kind of 2 jobs in. So we all were in one place. And then I remember one day, and I was working for a company that was really struggling at the time, was kind of a dinosaur in the industry. And one day we were told, hey, the company's going to hire some folks out in India and they're going to help with our product development. And all of a sudden, all of us were freaking out, because we figured that those folks in India, they were going to take our jobs, and we were just training them to take our jobs. The ironic thing that has changed so much about the way that we work now is we're all everywhere. And now, since then, I've had the opportunity to work on many teams, but just seeing how much a single team can be from all of these different locations, it's really gone from it being some of us in the world working together and having ideas to all of us working together and having ideas. When we no longer were in the same building, when we no longer were in the same time zone, we needed to communicate, we needed to collaborate differently. And it caused a lot of problems. I remember very, very vividly sitting in 2009, I was working at a software company that was embracing agility at that time. And they had one of the foremost experts in Scrum. I won't name the person's name because what I'm about to say is negative, but I will say it's one of the co-founders of Scrum. And that person was asked in front of the entire company, well, we've got a development office in India, and we've got a development office in Boston, we've got a development office in Minnesota. How do we work together using Scrum? And that person said, you don't. And basically the idea was, If you're not co-located, you can't work together as a team. You can't truly collaborate. That was 2009. And in 2009, I thought that was a pile of crud. And now in 2020, I really think that was a pile of crud. And if that was really true, we wouldn't all be in business today. So we've gone from it being some of us working in a single location with very much a groupthink of ideas to now it being all of us working in many different locations, representing many different perspectives and many different cultures. So we went from one voice to many voices, and man, that's sure gonna make all of our products, our teams, everything more robust and more understanding, and quite frankly, more fun. The most rewarding things that have come for me personally in my career are the people I've gotten to meet in different countries through work, the places I've gotten to go to travel, the things I've learned about different cultures. And if my world had just remained this throughout my career, that would have never happened. All right, next up, and I think this missed my generation a little bit, but is certainly falling on the generation after us. Education and learning has changed drastically. When we were in school, you were supposed to know things. You had to memorize them. You had to commit them to memory. You needed to be able to regurgitate them out without reference. Now that game isn't all that valuable anymore because we all have this tool that helps us to find information. We don't need to memorize it. But how do you learn? Are you able to and by learning, I kind of mean two different things. I mean the obvious, like, are you able to learn and do new things? But also, are you able to change the way you do something? Are you able to learn new processes and new ways of working? To me, I think as we go forward and we shift from knowing to learning, and being someone that's old, I still kind of appreciate knowing, but I value learning more. Because if you can figure it out, and if you're adaptable enough to work in a new way, in a better way, you'll figure it out, and you're adaptable enough to work in that new way. All right, but all of this stuff like this, another thing that has really changed is our worlds have become so interrupt driven. We are completely overwhelmed and inundated by information being thrown at us all of the time. And so often in business, I hear people brag, I'm really good at multitasking. I've even said these words, and I know I really suck at multitasking. And so we're trying, as an industry, we seem to value people that can do multiple things at once, and we seem to be trying to get better at this skill of multitasking. But the problem is the human brain is not super multi-threaded. Or maybe it's insanely multi-threaded because I don't have to worry about making my heart beat and my lungs go, but I can only do so much thinking all at once. Now, while our brain is not super multi-threaded, there are more and more threads of information that are coming at us. And if you think, let's just separate your personal life for a minute and just think of the business world. While I was preparing this presentation, I was having a hard time focusing because I was getting distracted by all of the things in the middle here. Email, text messages, Slack messages, messages from Jira Confluence, phone calls, Facebook, LinkedIn. These were just a few that were distracting me while I was making this presentation. I'm sure I forgot some of them. And the time that I spent on this presentation probably could have been cut by 2/3 if I had blocked out all of that and just focused. So to me, I think all of us, regardless of your age, and especially if you're a young person who's been really dealing with this interrupt-driven society your whole life, our skill set needs to shift from thinking we're trying to master multitasking to actually mastering focusing. Because if you can't focus, you'll never get anything done. And I don't get paid to answer email and answer Slack messages. I get paid to, make a business impact. Also, if you can't do, you can't lead. People don't see that you have a focus, you have a vision. If people don't see that you give them your time and attention, you're not going to be able to lead people. Oh, wait a minute, guys. I got a text message. Just hold on. Yeah, so, and I don't know about y'all, but these red little circles with numbers on them have trained me. like, and they don't even give me food or anything. Every time I see one of those things, I can't stop looking at it. And then I need to check it like right away. So all these little red circles are even such a distraction in my life that they're keeping me from being able to think. And the only time I'm able to think is when I shut that out and when I focus. A lot of my best ideas come on the weekend when I turn off all of this noise and I'm out exercising or something like that. And then all of a sudden that idea pops into my head. Go from multitasking to focusing. You'll be more productive in everything you do. All right. This one was my absolute hardest, going from perfect to resilient. I am the child of a civil engineer and a librarian, and my people were incredibly German, thus the last name of Steiner. I was definitely raised and truly believe in every sense of my being and fabric that perfect is the standard, and anything less than that is substandard. So to me, being perfect at work was always important. And being perfect meant being 100% sure, being 100% done, and being 100% right. But in technology, and as I would suspect, probably in most industries where lives aren't on the line, that becomes painfully slow, expensive, and fragile. I had this boss once, kind of midway through my career, and she called me in one day and she said, you know, Ann, you're really, really good at what you do, but you would be amazingly great if you would just do what you do 80% as well as you're doing it now, because then you could do so much more. And at the time that she shared that with me, it kind of upset me, honestly. I felt that she was telling me I should half-ass or do poor work. But what I came to realize later was that she wanted me to do less and to be less perfect so that I could do more. And that proved to be a very important lesson. Now, if you take that to the next step, you get to an idea called resiliency or anti-fragility. And Nassim Taleb talks about this in his book, Anti-Fragile, that basically if a person or a system is put under stress, goes through hard times, they're actually going to get stronger from that. So as people, we want to kind of bring it to failure actually makes us more resilient. It allows us to keep going. Hard times actually make us more resilient. And that's what we want to wire ourselves to as people. If you haven't checked out that book, check it out. It's a really good one. All right, and then the last thing I always like to say as we talk about personal agility is leadership. Leadership is most certainly not dead. Some might argue it's changing, but I don't even think it's changing. As someone who works in the Agile space a lot, I often hear, hey, we don't need leadership anymore. You know, you're just supposed to empower your team. The team will figure it out. That's a load of crud, folks. Leaders are always important. What has changed isn't leadership, it's the way we should lead. If you look back at the first industrial revolution, you know, that really brought about Taylorism. And Taylorism was a management paradigm wherein people were measured on output. And still to this day, you can kind of think of the paradox between a manager and a leader. A manager is probably someone that leads with authority, is seeking control, is focusing on your volume of output, and is demanding perfection and efficiency. A leader is a little bit different. So as we abandon Taylorism and we move on to leadership for the fourth IR, which still would have worked in the third and the second and the first, we want to lead via influence and example. Do the right things, give people the why, give them the context. We want to empower people, but we want to do that without abandoning them. You can't use, oh, you're empowered as an excuse for not being there to support people in teams. And often they're going to need your help. They're not going to be able to figure it out all on their own. We want to focus on impacts and learning over just output or how much got done. Because I could get an awful lot done, but it could be the wrong thing. And then lastly, and probably the most difficult, we want to value and model all of these concepts of personal agility. And I don't know about y'all, but when I get stressed, that's when I'm at my worst. And that's when I'm not very good at modeling personal agility. And if you asked any of the people that work with me at Cprime, they'll tell you that I'm going to lean more to the left on this picture when I'm more stressed out and more to the right when I'm less stressed out. But that's where that anti-fragility has to be baked in, and we have to kind of check ourselves a little bit. All right. So that gets us to, you know, some ideas around personal agility and what's going to allow us to move and to adjust as people. And once we as people are able to move and adjust, then our business can adjust too. A lot of companies, they're talking about business agility or bringing agility to their corporation, but what ultimately ends up holding them back the most is that their people don't have that agility, and therefore they halt it. All right, so let's think a little bit about what agility looks like in a business standpoint. We want to kind of shift from thinking in projects or hunks of work to thinking in more product or long-term horizons of a strategy. In that project world, we were always trying to estimate time, budget, and scope up front and to be perfect. We'd get funding based on that. That funding was usually a pretty large increment. Therefore, it represented a pretty big risk if we were to fail. So then we tried to make things more and more perfect. It took longer and longer. We worked on a long time horizon, and we just prayed that by the time we got that done, it'd be what the market wanted. But a lot of bad things could happen while we were working so hard. The market needs could have shifted. Customer wants something else. We might have been wrong, and we made that huge investment, but it was the wrong bet. Users don't end up needing or using the thing we wanted. It didn't get built the way we asked. We went over budget. We didn't deliver on time. Oh, so many bad things. So then the whole thing was kind of a waste. And what you saw in this whole world was that strive for perfection that led us to something that was incredibly fragile because there was so much that could go wrong. And in the end, we had no vehicle for learning. The other thing that was happening was we were really focused on the work or output, as we talk about in Taylorism, over the impact or what value are we providing to the market. Even if you think about traditional project management, talking about things like projects, milestones, and tasks, it's all about the work. We want to shift that more into thinking about what experiences do we want to provide? What value do we want to give to our customer? What impact do we want to have? Once you're able to do those things and you shift that mindset, now comes business agility. And with respect to business agility, it's really about making smaller investments. You may still have that one big bag of money like you see below, but we're going to start to break up that bet into smaller increments of investment. Then with that smaller increment of investment, we're going to build less, but we're going to validate as we go. That validation is going to focus on impact. So as we see across in the bottom, we're going to make a couple small bets here. And we might realize these first few bets, they were wrong. But that's going to give us some learning. And now we can adjust. We make an adjustment. Yeah, now we're starting to get on track. As you go over time, yeah, we still may get some other things wrong, but we can adjust, we can move, we can shift. So this allows us to shift with the market and with other external forces, as well as those internal forces in that learning. When you bring this all together, now your plans, your roadmap, what you do over time is going to shift and maneuver on a curve like this. And that ability to change is actually what agility is. The other cool thing that you get from this, because we're making these small bets, because we're measuring and learning, what we've built is very anti-fragile. It gets better as we make mistakes. It's very resilient. It can respond to the market. So why wouldn't every business do this? What holds us back? Usually it's a little different in every company, but usually it's going to come back to people and policies. Sometimes people aren't willing to change. Sometimes they aren't incented in a way that this is a good thing. Sometimes it's culture of an organization to be perfect. Often we look at leaders, and often we tend to look at finance and the way things are funded and how success is measured. It's different for everyone, but I just take a moment, think about what's holding us back in my company. All right, so kind of bringing this whole thing all together. Personal agility fuels business agility. So if we as people can be flexible and maneuverable, that's the first step in all of this. Back in the day, I was part of the military. I was in the United States Marine Corps. And the motto of the United States Marine Corps is Semper Fidelis, which stands for always faithful. But the Marines are remarkable in that it's an incredibly resilient organization, and that resiliency or anti-fragility is taught from your very first day of boot camp. And one of the, informal mottos of the United States Marine Corps is Semper Gumby. And Gumby was kind of like a Play-Doh-y like toy that we had back in the 70s and 80s. But Gumby could twist and adjust no matter what, and always could handle that and wouldn't break. And in the Marine Corps, they always challenged us, be Semper Gumby, or always flexible, be able to handle anything, don't break. That's what personal agility is. Now, if we, person for person in an organization, have that personal agility, now our business can have agility too, which means the business and the way we work as teams, products, and organizations, we can work in iterations of plan, do, learn, and we truly can adjust and learn from those organizations. That's what's going to help us to excel through change. That's what's going to keep us relevant as change comes faster and faster and faster. And that's what's going to make it so that change is our friend versus our threat. All right, folks, that brings me to the end of what I had to share with you today. I hope this was fun. Here you see all my contact information. I'd love to connect with y'all, LinkedIn, Twitter, shoot me a mail if you have questions, and come check us out at cprime.com. We're a tech consulting company and help with everything from product thinking, process, technology improvements, and tooling that supports all of that. Check us out at cprime.com. All right, Mina, what are you thinking? We got any questions?
Thank you, Anne. That was fantastic. A lot of the great comments. People resonated with the multitasking aspect, particularly the notification red numbers. And then there is comments around being a lot of takeaways. Yeah, and folks, if you have questions, please, you can use the chat box, and you're also free to unmute yourselves if you have questions for Anne. So there is a question. Anne, are you able to see the chat box as well?
Yes.
Okay. Before we get into questions, I did want to make a couple of remarks. I loved how you set the stage for the whole event, to be honest, because a lot of the things that you talked about, personal agility, business agility, those are things that several of our speakers are going to dive into a little more detail. Also leadership. So this evening at 8:00 p.m. Eastern, David McConney is going to talk to us about collaborative leadership as an inclusive approach to organizational agility. And then we start the day tomorrow with more around workplace skills for the future. So you talked about how we are learning differently and how it's important knowing versus learning. So each aspect that you talked about is a perfect segue into individual speaker sessions. So I really, really loved how you did that. And it's brought in so much value to this session. I really appreciate that. And thank you very much for doing that. And for those of us that are on the call, I will point out that this whole team of 21 has, we had 2 meetings and everything else has been remote. We've shared our abstracts. So to come up with something that, and I agree with Srini, panoramic is the word. I think that it really speaks to your skills and abilities, and hats off to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. All right, so let's look at, I'm kind of looking at some of the comments that are coming in, and Crystal makes an interesting statement. So she says, this reminds me of my science background where we started every experiment small scale before going into large production. And science is such an awesome metaphor for this and has always been working in this model of experimentation for as long as science existed. And I often joke with people in the industry because I'm usually working with software techie kind of people, so I always joke, what's the difference between a scientist and an engineer or a software engineer? And the difference is the software engineer expects to get it right the first time. Scientists never expect to get it right the first time. Can you imagine? We'd be like, oh, this curing cancer project didn't go very well. We completely failed. And so we all have, Crystal, you're so right, and we all have a lot that we could learn from a culture of experimentation and from scientists that keep trying and trying and trying. And it's okay to fail because you learn and you adjust, and that's what brings you closer to the ultimate objective.
Absolutely. Very well said. Do you see that question from Rebecca? How do we ensure that we don't lose some team members as we turn more digital for those that are less comfortable?
Yeah, and I think it's two different things. If it's truly digital or technical skills, we can help to teach those. But more times than not, it isn't that. More times than not, it's fear. Um,
Mm,
and it's different types of fear. I'm working with change every day. And I would say one of the things that's really stood out to me as a coach is often the people that initially present as resistant and obstinate are actually the people in an organization that care the most, but they're worried
mm,
about something that's going to go wrong and how that could hurt their customer or how they might get blamed for it. And it's not ill intent. They're not trying to be obstructionists. They're just truly the most passionate, caring people. And sometimes it comes off as kind of negative. So for me, what I try to do as a coach, because I've seen this pattern so much, is I try to understand their viewpoint and what they're really, really fearing, and then let that cynicism be okay.
mm,
Just, I usually will not ask someone to agree with me or expect them to be a true believer. I just try to say, hey, would you be willing to try this? And if it ends up being a big cluster and it didn't work out, we'll change it back. And I promise I'll take responsibility. But what's probably going to happen is we're going to learn together and you'll find some things that get better. And usually, if you say, hey, would you be willing to try? Would you do an experiment with me? They're willing to try, and then
mm,
you truly do learn together.
mm. That's a great point, and it comes back to practicing empathy on a daily basis, right?
Mhm.
So everyone has a story, so absolutely, I really love that point. Um, there are more comments here. So Sanmeet, I've met her on the StarMe platform, and I know she comes from the world of L&D. So a couple of points she makes is about agility and perfection, how you sort of juxtapose those concepts, and also the around learning as a whole. It's about how we learn as well. Those are some, so lots of great takeaways. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions.
Yeah, the kind of the learning thing, it's interesting. If I look back at my parents who are a classic baby boomer generation, when I was going to college and I was going to major in computer science, they both expressed concern that with this career choice, it would be such a struggle to stay up to date and things like that. And it might be
Mm,
difficult to make a career in that. And that certainly is true, but it really shows the differences in thinking. And now, if I had children, which I don't, but I I would never even think for a moment that they would make a career in a single job or at a single company. It wouldn't even cross my mind.
mm,
Um, my mom really only worked one place her entire career. My father really only worked two.
yep.
So you look at how much that's changed now. If somebody who's coming out of college, I can't even imagine how many places, how many different types of jobs they're going to have. So it really, to us, it's going to be about, okay, how do we learn that next thing? How do we do that next thing? But that's so cool because we're not stuck having to do the same thing for 40 years. Like, I couldn't imagine that. I don't know about you, Mina, but you've had a lot of bends
Uh,
in your career. I bet you didn't want to sit in that same cube either, huh?
so it's very interesting that you said that, because my father worked for a bank, and that's all he did his entire life. And I lived with with a lot of what's the word? A lot of insecurity around the fact that I have changed jobs so many times, and none of my two jobs have been similar. It's only now in the last couple of years that I've really learned to say that, that's actually a strength.
Right.
And it's only in the last few months that I've actually come around to saying, you know what, hey, I'm actually a T-shaped professional. I get things, and I actually am able to span different industries and different um, uh, uh, ways of working because of my experience. But I totally get it, because I think my entire adult life, my parents have been worried about what the hell am I trying to do.
And we spent most of our professional life trying to explain to our mothers what we do.
Yes. My mother for sure still doesn't get what I'm trying to do. She thinks that I've left a well-paying job and a lot of financial security for something that I'm trying to still figure out. So she still asks me on a daily basis, what is it that you do? But anyway, there's a
Well,
lot of agreement on that.
you have a good company vision when your mom gets it.
Absolutely. Um, all right. Any other questions? Lots of great comments, and the content, what you shared, resonated with a lot of us. I know Mindy talked about that video that you showed, the S&P index, that really resonated with all of us, and Mindy calls that one out specifically. And just I want to make sure that there are no questions that we have not answered.
I just want to also mention, Zoya, that the whole concept of doing things to 80% really resonated with me as well. I personally, just by nature, have always been a perfectionist. And then ever since I've actually married my husband, he's the furthest thing from a perfectionist. So I feel like he's actually, like, he'll do things to 60% and think it's 90%. And I'll do things to, 98% and we'll think it's 60%. And so I feel like the two of us together actually make a pretty good team, and he's done a really good job of getting me to that same place of just accepting that, hey, this is good enough. And I like the way and the way you outlined it in terms of you actually end up doing so much more in totality if you just do things to 80%. So I love that concept.
Yeah, it's definitely like the law of diminishing return hits you. It's so expensive in the business world. The analogy I always use, I was a total geek when I was in college, and I used to study for tests not to get A's but to get 100s. And if I had studied just to get an A, I could have spent a lot more time drinking beer and partying with my friends. And I got 100 on a test in college, in a STEM class once or twice. So most of the time I failed the standard, right? But I had no trouble getting A's, and I should have drank more beer.
Yep, there you go.
Anne, I actually had a question for you, and I remember us talking about this. Can you tell us more about the challenges and opportunities you faced when you transitioned from working just in a US-based environment to a global environment? Can you talk to us a little more about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in both of the companies where that was kind of new, one critical stupid thing that was done is we just cheaped out on travel, and we weren't allowed to travel. And most of my experience is US and India. And so the time zones are almost completely upside down. You got 1 or 2 hours of overlap a day. And for us, it's super early in the morning. And for the folks in India, it's super late in the evening. And so nobody's at their best at that time on either side. And you're just kind of trying to slog through it. When I finally got to go to India, which I ended up mostly having to personally fund to get my company to do it, but I spent 3 or 4, I can't remember, weeks sitting with my team in our offices in Pune. And it was just a game changer. Not only could I come to understand a lot more culturally, I also really understood situations of like how the power goes out all the time and stuff like that I never understood, and getting to know people and build relationships, because it is much more difficult to build relationships on IM and email and in a 1-hour meeting when everyone's tired. And so for me, that was the big game changer when we became people and friends and could break bread together. Then after that, everything else fell into place. Before that, the voice on the telephone, and sometimes a voice on the telephone, because until people know you, they're not going to truly share their thoughts with you, or something in disagreement or things like that. So to me, like, if I could go back in a time machine and have authority, I would have insisted upon travel, bi-directional travel, more of it, always in the beginning. And we would have gotten the money back in efficiency tens of times over.
that last point that you said about the true cost of doing this versus not doing, that's a great point. Michael here has a question. He says, so what kind of business agility will particularly benefit companies trying to adapt to COVID?
It's going to depend a little bit on your company, but I think personal agility is going to matter in terms of continuing collaboration and being able to work differently. Probably about 97% of us have been immediately had to start working differently than we're accustomed to. And some people are responding well to that and some people aren't. Anti-fragility right now is a huge thing for us, all of us as people, because people are dealing with all this COVID stuff, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and that's spanning your personal life and your professional life. So are we able to continue through this, and are we able to step away from the perfection, give ourselves a break when we need to, be it on the personal or the professional side, but keep experimenting, learning, and iterating. When it truly comes to business agility, I think there's some tough days ahead of us, especially if you're a large company. How are you going to change? Are you going to respond? Are you going to try to do more of the same thing? Or are you going to conduct experiments and pivot your business? We're going to see incredible innovation that's going to be brought on throughout this world because of COVID. And we're going to see companies struggle and ultimately die because of COVID. And all these things that we're talking about today are going to decide which side of that coin you're on.
I agree. One of the things, so one of my neighbors here, she just recently changed jobs. So the cool thing was that she was able to find a job during the COVID situation, and they did a great job of onboarding her virtually. And she's going to work from home for indefinitely until the company decides what they want to do. What I learned from her was that her company has this policy, COVID specific policy, where once a week the employee can choose whatever day, and they can take half a day off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a policy that they have in place now. Yes, it's a very large corporation in the financial sector, and they are able to afford that. But the other thing is, this is on top of the day-to-day flexibility that they have. Nobody looks over their shoulder. They're not mandated to keep their cameras on and things like that. Because a lot of organizations, and I was quite surprised to find such policing type of policies even in the US with some companies, where employees were expected that they'll keep their cameras on for all of their meetings. What I think that when you talk about business agility, for me, it's also about how our companies, where is the empathy? Do they have empathy when they think about it? Because when you say working from home, it's not just working from home. You are actually bringing work home, and you're opening up your home space, which is your sacred space, out to the world, right? So some of us, like myself, for instance, I knew what I was getting into when I started my business, saying I am going to be a virtual business. I am boundaryless as a business. So I know that, okay, that means that I'm going to be, some spaces in my house will become public spaces because I'm going to be on video calls. But as a business owner, I'm able to make those choices, and I know what I'm getting into. But as an employee, expecting that you're going to do that no matter what, when you have your kids, you're trying to homeschool them, you have pets and all of this going on, and then these expectations around that. I think that these are certain aspects of agility as well. I mean, do we think about the people? Do we have a people first practice in place or not? Something else, and I want to get your view on this, and Michael's question made me think about it. What would you say from a personal perspective and from an organizational perspective are like the top 2-3 things that people and companies might want to keep in mind as they think about reopening, like post-COVID? That's happening in several parts of the world. The lockdown is being eased down and things like that. So what do you think we as employees and organizations as well, what are some of the things we need to have top of mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very difficult one that I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer, but I can tell you as a member of our leadership team at Cprime, some of the things that we're talking about and thinking about. We're blessed in our business that usually we come to our clients don't come to us. So we're going to take a very conservative approach to opening our offices. You know, I don't know if it's like this in the whole world, but the things are very polarized in the United States right now. And so people have very, very different beliefs, you know, ranging from, you can't tell me to wear a mask, it's a violation of my freedom, all the way to, I'm never leaving my house again, I might die, and everything in between. So I think as companies and organizations, we're going to need to meet people where they're at a little bit. And if they can do their job, then, you know, give some of those freedoms and those liberties so that we're not forcing them into a situation where they're very personally uncomfortable for their own safety or the safety of their families. So I think that's kind of one of them. And, you know, I talk to a lot of companies, and I'm hearing even from really large companies too, like there's no rush, and this, especially for headquarters or things that are not customer facing. I wonder if we're actually going to see a reinvention of kind of modern office spaces, and if we'll see companies go to much smaller footprints and use work from home as an opportunity to save more money. The other thing that is concern for companies that are thinking about opening their offices is how can we socially distance? And we've kind of spent the last 20 years bringing people closer together in office space, less cube walls, more people working at tables. And now we may have to reverse some of that. If we get into situations where we can't collaborate, we can't be in meeting rooms together, then what value are we getting from being in the office? So I think it's a tough struggle right now, and we're gonna have to kind of figure out some things as we go. And as the leaders of our nations and our states are kind of wrestling with how do we go back to work, those of us that are in companies or are individuals that can work from home, I think we just sit and we count our blessings for having more choice than a lot of people do.
That's true. Very well said. Absolutely. There's a comment here from Rebecca. She says, I see too many companies trying to go back to something as close to what they did before as possible, fighting the change you need to do to be safe and the things you need to be relevant.
Yeah, I haven't seen as much of that. In fact, there was an article on the front page of the Minneapolis paper on Sunday talking about how companies are actually re-engineering their working space. I'm a little skeptical that having people in every fourth cube is going to make that much of a difference, honestly, but I'm not a scientist, so my opinion isn't all that relevant there. But I think, Rebecca, your comment is really getting back to kind of the point of this whole talk. Are you willing to change as an organization, or are you going to keep doing things the way you always did it? That's going to determine success. And if all the, you know, the worst is true about this, that's going to be a company that's going to see their workforce become sick and not be able to work at a higher rate than their competition that didn't make that same choice. So you're not taking care of your people, and you're not accomplishing the mission.
Right. Absolutely. And you know, that last part you talked about, the business aspect and the people aspect, one of the talks that is going to delve more into that is on Friday in the morning, that Madhav and I are co-presenting, and it's about putting people and planet first as a sustainable way of doing business. And we touch upon that aspect a little bit more. So it's another nice tie back that you've done. Mindy has a comment. She says, I know of some architecture firms that are working on this about figuring out social distancing within workspaces. So I guess that's another way that this pandemic is actually creating opportunities out of these challenges as well, I'd say.
You look at most places in the world, all right, let's say we can social distance at work. How do you get to work in New York City, in New Delhi, in Shanghai, in a social distance manner?
Yeah. We'll have to have those individual hyperloops like Star Wars, I guess. I don't know.
Gotta work on those hovercraft.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're coming up to time here, to 12:30 Eastern, which is 10 p.m. India time right now. I just wanted to, if there are no more questions, I just wanted to again say a huge thanks to you, Anne, for tying this all together so nicely. To the audience and well, really attendees, because there was such active participation. So thank you very much for taking the time. You know, I also want to take this opportunity to invite you back to the sessions the rest of the week. We have one in about 7.5 hours, 8 p.m. Eastern, which is 5:30 a.m. India time. And I don't remember the other time zones right now, but David McConney will speak to us about collaborative leadership and inclusive approach to organizational agility. So I really hope to see at least some of you, I know depending on your time zone, but I would encourage you to register for as many sessions as you're interested in, even if it's not in your time zone, so that you will have access to the recording directly from within UBCity, from the platform. So the platform allows you to access the recording for each session right there. So it's very nicely done. So I would highly encourage you to do that, even if it's not in your time zone. So once again, and one other thing, the sessions are truly on a follow the sun schedule. So we have 3 sessions starting tomorrow, each day, 8 a.m. Eastern. That covers east of the US, so Eastern Europe, Africa, India, and then we have one at 11 a.m., which also does cover a lot of these places, and then 8 p.m. Eastern, which covers most of the US and then west of us, all the way up to the APAC region. So it is set up in that way so that people from different time zones can participate. This is a truly global event. So please register for as many sessions as you're interested in, so that you actually have access to the recordings as well. Yeah. So once again, there's a question here. So yeah, access to the recordings will be available to only the registered attendees. So you'll have to actually go in and register for the sessions that you're interested in, even if you can't attend it. Within about 4 to 5 hours, the recording will become available in that session, and you'll be able to go and access it from the UBC platform under your enrollments. And I'll send out some information about that to everyone. So we're right at time. So again, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic kickoff, and I really look forward to a productive, really conversational week ahead. Thank you all. Thank you very much for taking the time, and look forward to seeing you, at least most of you, on the rest of the sessions this week. Yeah.